What's going on, world? Welcome back to Iron Sharpens. My name is Brad Marquis. We are sitting here with Mr. Andre Thomas.
What's up,
How you
Brad?
doing, sir? Now,
Good.
me and
How
Dre,
are
we
you?
go back, man. We've known each other for a while.
Oof, yes.
We've actually worked together on a lot of different initiatives. But for those of you who don't know, Iron Sharpens is a podcast that we've been doing where men helping men, man. So, a lot of this is geared towards helping young men, giving them the juice, giving them the game that we didn't have on the way up. And we had to learn the hard way. So if we can do what we can do to help you not have to learn the hard way, that's what we hear. We're not exclusive to the young men because the young ladies out there probably need the same game that we kick into the young men. So listen in, tune in. We're going to have something for y'all too. But right now, we're here with Dre. And I'm always in awe of the work that you do. Dre has been working with youth, since I can't remember.
Yeah, about 22 years now.
22 years,
Yeah,
right. And he's been involved in the city of Trenton, all of Mercer County. I'm sure you'll let him know everywhere else you've been.
Absolutely.
But, just in the community, helping out, getting these kids off the street or getting them into better opportunities so they can, just make something better out of themselves and grow beyond their circumstances.
Absolutely.
So Dre, introduce yourself,
Sure.
man, and tell everybody, a little bit about, what you're involved in right now.
Sure. Okay. Andre Thomas. I work primarily for IOS, which is a community development organization in Trenton. And I've been there for the past 22 years. I'm the senior training manager for the Energy and Environmental Training Center. But prior to starting at CEET in 2009, prior to that, when I started at IOS, I was the operations manager for the IOS Youth Build program, which is still in existence, known as the IOS Youth Institute. And that program was really helping high school dropouts get on the right path and not just earn their diplomas, but also learn important life skills so that they can utilize that diploma as a tool for excellence and success. So it's really helping them transform their lives.
And what made you get involved? How did it all start?
Yes, well, it all started because I myself, growing up in the city of Trenton, got in trouble as a youngster. I was good in school, gifted and talented, right? But ninth grade is where I started to get involved with the streets, get involved with my friends, and it led me to incarceration in my early 20s. And I got sentenced to 15 years with a 5-year minimum mandatory, all for not nonviolent offenses, but distribution of drugs, and ended up doing 5 years and coming home in 1997. But I was, at that point, I was ready to go out here and really help my community. I had to reinvent myself because that time I was in prison, I should have been in college. So I had to really turn it around and figure out what I'm going to do with my life and how am I going to impact this world based on my experiences. So that's where I kind of came across IOS. I actually got discovered because I was out, I was actually working for a company, Mill Hill, first, doing peer education, that's where it kind of started. But then I ran across Marty Johnson at IOS. And what they were doing really fit what I wanted to do, helping those young people get on the right path. So, and once I met him and decided that's what I wanted to do, they kind of pulled me into their world, and I've been there ever since.
Well, what was it about the incarceration that said, okay, I want to make this change, I want to help my community?
Right.
What led you down that road?
Yeah, because when I was incarcerated, I realized, one, I messed up. How do I get back on track? But I also made observations. I started talking to inmates that couldn't make it, they were coming back, interviewing other lifers. I was around lifers, and a lot of it for them started when they were young. Making poor choices. So my dad, I reconnected with my dad, and he started sending me books, reading books by Naeem Akbar, Dr. Stephen Covey, So I'm reading it, and then light switches started going off, Brad, where I realized where I went wrong, and now I had to, create this path of redemption. And that's where it started. It was like I was even reading a lot of Les Brown. So as I was reading these books and light switches started coming on, I said, okay, what am I going to do in my life now that I'm at this place, this turning point? But I started counseling inmates from the stuff I was reading. I'm reading stuff by Naeem Akbar, and light switches are going off. So I started talking to guys, some of my I called them colleagues at the time, right? Some of the other inmates that were going through stuff. I'm actually practicing on them, and I realized, some important things that they kept coming back because of the things that they were doing when they went home. So just listening to them and talking to them, I realized some of the things I had to do coming home.
Right.
And I think that's where it happened for me. Came home, I was on a bracelet for a while. I started working in warehousing, became successful working in warehousing. And one thing I realized, I said, how can I go and help people unless I first got on the right path and made some good positions? So I kind of elevated in the warehouse where I became a traffic manager and, you know, going to work every day, working overtime, you know, and that's when I realized that, okay, I think I'm ready. And I started volunteering. I volunteered through Mill Hill. My dad was doing some work with Mill Hill. He was on their board, and we were involved with the Male Summit going into the schools. And that's when Stephen Rosen from Mill Hill discovered me initially, pulled me into his world. But then that's when I discovered IOS, and I realized that this is where I wanted to be. And they say purpose is not something you always decide. It's something you discover along the path. Right. And once I came across that, I realized that this is where I wanted to be.
How was your reception coming home? You know, people, you know, finding a job, getting a job, because you know it's not always. It's
tough, man.
Talk about that, man.
Yeah, it was tough because I ran into some roadblocks, you know, and I was persistent, resilient, but I did run it. I remember I was going to one job in particular. A lot of my boys that transitioned from the street was driving garbage trucks. So I feel like I'm gonna do that, you know. And I went down there, and the guy said, "You got to go get your CDLs." I went and got my CDL, came back, and he didn't really have nothing for me. So that was a defining moment. You know, what you're going to do. I decided to stay on the path. I didn't let that discourage me. It encouraged me. And I said, okay, if that door closes, it must be some other doors willing to open. So I stayed the course, and things started to unfold, you know, and that's where it happened for me.
No, that's a beautiful story, man. I you know, and I know that in between phase before things start happening is when dumb things start happening.
Right, when you're tested.
When you're tested,
yes.
Right? When it don't move as fast as you want to move, or when you know, and then you kind of trying to do better is hard. So let me go back to doing something I was.
That's that turning point. Yep, that's that crossroad.
That crossroad. So was it the support around you, mentorship around you? Was it just what was that thing that just made you keep pushing?
The support really helped. You know, I had my dad in my corner. I had a family that really believed in me, and they offered that support. But it really was internal,
right?
You know, because that path, you know, I was at that turning point where I could easily went left, but I decided to go right, and I realized that these challenges that I was faced with, I had to overcome, because if I'm going to help others, I had to teach them how to overcome. So I pushed through some of those challenges, man, and it started to produce fruit, because I became a traffic manager. And then, you know, when I decided to volunteer and the opportunity came, when I went back to the warehouse, the guy I was working with, and I told him that I'm gonna move on to work with kids in Trenton that were struggling. He almost was like, "What do you mean, Dre? You're gonna help kids in Trenton?" You know, because I was of value to him.
Right.
And that's when you realize when you're of value, when it's time for you to move on and go to your next level, your next part of your journey. People want to hold on to you because you're valuable to them.
Get the job done.
Right, exactly. So for me, it kind of affirmed that I was where I need to be.
Right.
Because he needed me to be there, and I left money on the table.
Right.
Because I was pretty much doing good in the warehouse world. I was in management. I had a flow, but this is where my heart was, helping folks that struggled in the same areas that I struggled, and I wanted to really give back in that way.
Got you. And thank you for that.
Yes, absolutely.
I know just a handful of people that you're consistently helping or have helped. You know, and it's been a beautiful to watch, beautiful to see.
Sure.